3 insane night shift rules every rural cop in Montana follows you won't believe too. In the deep, whispering shadows of the Montana wilderness, where the towering pines loom like giants against a darkened sky, 3 mind-boggling rules govern the lives of the brave souls on the night shift. Life here is steeped in mystery, a pulse of danger lurking around every corner. Every rustle in the underbrush could be a wild animal or something far more sinister. You can feel the weight of uncertainty pressing down. Does your heart race at the thought of it? It should. Because when the sun sets, and the moon casts its silvery glow, cops in this vast, lonely expanse follow some truly bizarre guidelines that you won't believe. First off, there's the rule about never driving alone during the witching hour. It might seem strange, but when the clock strikes midnight, the cops buddy up. They say it's for safety, but locals whisper about the ancient curse of the mountain, a dark secret this community shares. They believe shadows whisper warnings, and those who venture alone don't always make it back. Picture it, 2 officers, side by side, feeling the bustle of silence around them, knowing they're not just watching for criminals. They're on the hunt for something far beyond the human mind, something inexplicable. Then there's the peculiar issue of the radios. Officers have a saying, if you lose your signal, you've lost your sanity. At 2 a.m., static is the only sound that fills the air. An eerie silence, the kind that makes your skin prickle and sends cold shivers down your spine. Just a few weeks back, a lone patrolman reported strange voices crackling through the static, urging him to leave the area, warnings that felt unreal but were drawn from deep within the fabric of the forest itself. What do these voices want? Why did they choose him? It's a chilling thought that keeps even the toughest cops awake at night. And finally, the most outrageous rule of all, when you see a light flickering in the distance, you don't approach. Instead, you turn around and drive the other way. Residents talk in hushed tones about mysterious lights that dance between the trees, illusions that lead the unsuspecting into the jaws of danger. Sworn to protect, the officers know that curiosity could come at a price. It could be the very end of them. What's more terrifying? The flicker of light feels like an invitation you can't ignore. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the officers strategize during their midnight patrol, a chilling howl echoes through the air. The world stands still, the darkness thickens, and the eyes of the forest seem to pulse with anticipation. An unfamiliar feeling gnaws at their insides. Then, the radios crackle to life once again, but this time it's different. The static is laced with urgency, voices chattering about a case gone wrong. Someone is missing and they are not alone in those woods. What happens next? The mystery deepens, and it pulls you in, leaving you wondering what dark truth these night rules are protecting. The air turned electric, heavy with dread. The 2 officers, Parker and Sanchez, exchanged grim glances. They had heard it before: if something feels wrong, it probably is. And at that moment, everything felt deeply wrong. Did you catch that? Parker said, gripping the steering wheel tighter. Someone's out there, and they're not alone. Sanchez nodded. He flicked the radio dial, trying to find a clearer frequency, but all they got was more static. We need to head towards that call, he insisted, but the nagging rules played in the back of his mind. What if they drove into something they couldn't handle? Just then, a flickering light caught their attention. It pulsed at the edge of the trees, beckoning them closer. No! The rules screamed in their minds: never approach a flickering light. The stories of the lost travelers flooded back, faces twisted in confusion, eyes wide with terror. No! Parker shouted, turning the car's headlights to illuminate the scene more clearly. We can't go toward it. Another howl echoed, but this one was closer. Sanchez felt his pulse quicken, a sense of primal fear taking over. We should back off, get a team. This feels wrong. But their own anxieties couldn't shake the urgency of the call. What if it's someone who needs help? What if they're in real trouble? Parker argued, his voice rising. The light flickered again, now more insistent, and Sanchez could swear he saw dark shapes darting in and out of the trees, the unmistakable outline of movement. This isn't a good idea, he muttered, his instinct screaming for caution. They inched closer, caught between duty and the gnawing fear that had taken root in their chests. The world outside their vehicle faded, only the light remained, pulsating like the heartbeat of the forest. Suddenly, the radio crackled anew, a discordant blend of voices merging into a single desperate cry, "Help! Get out now!" Time froze. Their hearts raced, each second stretching into eternity. Suddenly, Sanchez felt a jolt, like fingers crawling up his spine. The car's engine sputtered as static filled the airwaves, drowning out everything else. "Parker, we need to go. Now!" he yelled. But Parker seemed transfixed, his gaze locked on the light. "I have to see, I can't just leave someone out there." Sanchez shook his head, desperation clawing at his throat. "We'll be the ones lost. Please, Parker." With a fierce tug, Sanchez yanked the wheel, pulling the car around. The engine roared in response, yet the flickering light swirled behind them, now feeling like a living entity, clawing at their retreat. Shadows danced in the rearview mirror, flickering like the light, growing darker. Ahead lay safety, the town, the people, the light of day. But shadows whispered promises of secrets best left buried in the woods, echoing in their minds. Those who seek truth often find torment. As they sped away, adrenaline coursing through their veins, Parker's heart sank. The call belted through the radio one last time: "You can't escape. You're already part of it." They drove into the safety of the small town, where streetlights flickered with warm, golden light. But the question lingered: what had they left behind in the darkness? Parker glanced at Sanchez, the weight of the unsaid words heavy in the air. Were they truly safe, or had they awakened something? And as they pulled into the station, the radio crackled once more, this time with a message meant only for them: "You shouldn't have run. It has begun." What would happen next? Would the darkness chase them, or had their choices sealed their fate in the shadows? The silence in the station was deafening. Parker and Sanchez stepped inside, breathing heavily, the weight of their encounter pressing down on them. The familiar smells of stale coffee and old paperwork filled the air, but all they could smell was the lingering trace of fear that hung between them. "Did you hear that?" Sanchez finally said, his voice strained. They both knew the radio's last message was not just noise. Parker nodded, running a hand through his hair. "It feels like we crossed a line," he murmured, glancing around the station for their colleagues, officers who would laugh off local legends and horror stories. But today, he felt the walls closing in, the shadows of doubt growing thicker. They needed clarity, not comfort. Sanchez leaned over the dispatch desk, flipping through the logbook. The records were mundane routine calls about disturbances and traffic stops, but something was nagging at him. "What about that call?" he asked. "It should be in here." "Yeah, but it's not." Parker crossed his arms, feeling a chill run down his spine. "And that's odd, right? We weren't the only ones out there." His mind reeled back to the flickering light and the desperate cries. What if someone else went to check on it? Before Sanchez could respond, the radio crackled back to life, jarring both men. "Unit 4, report. We have a situation. Junction Road, near the old Miller farm." The half-formed word sent the fear coursing through Parker's veins again. "That's where we were," he breathed. "It's not over," Sanchez whispered, eyes wide. Before they could debate the wisdom of returning to the scene, the sergeant's voice rang through the radio, impatient and harsher than usual. "Unit 4. I need a response. We should go, Sanchez insisted, but Parker hesitated. Just think, Sanchez. We don't even know what we saw. What if it's worse than we imagined? Seconds ticked by, filled with tension that crackled like static. Parker remembered the stories he had dismissed, the folklore that ebbed and flowed through the town. Those lights, there's a legend about them, he finally said, voice barely above a whisper. What legend? Sanchez pressed, fear flaring in his chest. Something about lost souls. They say if you chase the light, it takes you. Just like it did with the others. Parker's voice trembled. Sanchez swallowed hard, casting a glance at the door leading outside. But we have a duty. What if someone else is in danger? The instincts of a police officer battled against the primal fear coursing through their veins. Parker felt the pull of responsibility, but the darkness nearby echoed with the desperate cries from earlier, a warning that nagged at the back of his mind. With a sudden resolve, Sanchez grabbed his keys. Let us go. We can't ignore this. Parker's heart raced in response, caught between two furies: loyalty to his partner and the fear of what lay ahead. As they rushed outside, the chill of the night air pierced through their uniforms, amplifying the sense of foreboding. Shadows flickered against the pale moonlight, and for a heartbeat, Parker thought he saw shapes moving in the trees. Anxiety clawed at his throat as Sanchez climbed into the driver's seat. Holy hell, I can't shake this feeling, Parker whispered to himself, but Sanchez had already turned the ignition, the engine purring to life. Here's to facing the fear, he said, forcing a grin as he backed the cruiser out of the lot. Let us hope we're not the next ones to be claimed. The road ahead twisted through the night, each mile feeling heavier than the last. The heavy atmosphere pressed in on them as they approached the infamous Junction Road. Sanchez squinted into the darkness, the headlights barely piercing the veil of blackness, and suddenly, Parker spotted it, a dull flicker far ahead in the trees. There it is! He shouted. But as they drew closer, something changed. The light morphed in intensity, almost alive, pulling them forward with an almost magnetic force. Fear coiled tightly in Parker's stomach, but he couldn't tear his gaze away. What are we walking into? He wondered, heart pounding. Sanchez gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. Portents tell of things worse than dark, he muttered under his breath. As they rolled to a stop, the forest loomed darkly around them, punctuated only by the pulsing light. A sudden cry shattered the night air, a blood-curdling scream echoing from the trees. What did we do? Parker whispered, a sinking realization settling over him. Something was waiting for them in the woods, something that had been awakened by their return. And now, only one question remained: would they be ready to face it, or would they too become part of the darkness? The darkness felt thick, suffocating, as Parker and Sanchez exchanged worried glances. The scream echoed like a bad omen, and for a brief moment, they were paralyzed by an overwhelming surge of fear. The lights danced between the trees, flickering ominously as if beckoning them closer. What was that? Sanchez half-whispered, barely able to keep his voice steady. I don't know, Parker said, his mind racing. But we can't sit here like sitting ducks. Sanchez nodded, swallowing hard, a knot of dread twisting in his stomach. With cautious determination, they climbed out of the vehicle, the crunch of gravel under their boots contrasting sharply against the palpable silence enveloping them. Stay close, Parker ordered, gripping his flashlight. The beam cut through the dense shadows but offered little comfort. As they moved towards the trees, that pulsing light swallowed them whole, casting eerie shadows that flickered and danced. Parker's heart thundered in his chest, urging him to retreat, but the pull of duty drove him forward. Somewhere deeper in the woods, beyond the reach of the flickering luminescence, lay the source of that deafening scream, and they had sworn an oath to protect the innocent. A rustle in the underbrush sent them both spinning around, flashlights darting. The uncertainty pulsed in the air, thick like fog. Did you see that? Sanchez's voice trembled, as he strained to see through the darkness. Just branches. It has to be branches, Parker whispered, even though his own conviction faltered. What if they were not alone? As they pressed further into the darkness, the air felt charged, dense like electricity. The relentless hum of the light drew them closer, its glow becoming less inviting and more unsettling. The trees seemed to shift as if breathing, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal hands. "Where's it coming from?" Sanchez asked, paranoia creeping in. They couldn't see the end of the path, the darkness sucking them in. Then, they saw it. A figure stood just beyond the light's reach, shadowed yet vaguely familiar. It swayed gently, mirroring the pulsating glow, as if caught in some hypnotic dance. Parker took a step forward, heart racing. "Hey. Are you okay?" The figure turned, the light revealing a face. It was someone they knew, a missing person from town. Only there was something wrong. Her eyes were wide, unseeing, filled with a horror Parker had never encountered. "Help me," she gasped, but it wasn't her voice. The sound sliced through the air, chilling him to the bone. The tone was wrong, distorted. It felt like an echo from another world. "No! Stay back!" Sanchez shouted, pulling Parker away as the woman staggered toward them, arms outstretched, her mouth agape in a silent scream. Suddenly, the flickering light shot forward, swallowing her figure entirely, winking out of existence as if she had never been there. What just happened?" Parker gasped, panic rising. "I don't know," Sanchez replied, eyes wild with fear. "But we have to get out of here." They were on the verge of turning back when the forest seemed to shift around them, sounds of laughter echoing from all directions, unnatural and mocking. "This isn't right," Parker muttered, backing away. With desperation fueling their movement, they stumbled to their cruiser. But as they reached for the doors, the headlights began to flicker, plunging them into darkness. "No, no, no!" Sanchez cursed angrily, rapping on the dashboard while frantically twisting the keys. The radio crackled to life again, delivering a guttural growl through the speaker. "Unit 4, you shouldn't have come back." Shivers ran down Parker's spine. The realization hit him. This was more than just a call gone wrong, it was a warning, a curse that threatened to entrap them in the very shadows they sought to fight. "We need to move," Sanchez shouted, punching the ignition with renewed urgency. The engine groaned in protest, and Parker felt the weight of the night pressing down on him like a tomb. Just as the cruiser roared to life, Parker cast a final glance at the forest. Beneath the canopy of night, shadows flickered to life, whispering terrible secrets. Would they escape the darkness tonight? Or had they already drawn the attention of something far more sinister? As the cruiser sped away, their hearts hammered in unison, not just from fear, but from the undeniable realization that this was only the beginning. What horror awaited them next? The engine rattled and sputtered before finally catching, the sound a lifeline in the oppressive silence. Parker slammed his foot on the gas, and the cruiser surged forward, propelling them into the night. As the trees blurred past in a web of shadows, their hearts raced, adrenaline electrifying their senses. "Did you see her face?" Sanchez asked between ragged breaths, clutching the dashboard as if it could anchor him to sanity. "That wasn't her, it couldn't have been." Parker's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "No, it wasn't he. That was something else. Something wrong." The flickering lights were now a memory, but they could still feel that gaze, the hollow stare that had pierced through them. A chill shot down his spine despite the warmth flooding through the cruiser. "We need to turn around. We can't just leave her." "Are you insane?" Sanchez's voice rose, crackling with fear. "Whatever that was, it wanted us. You didn't see it the way I did. We've got to get back to town, fast." But Parker wasn't listening. His instincts pulled him back to her, an undeniable urge to return to the haunted woods, to face whatever evil lurked in their depths. "We have to report this," he said, determination thrumming through him. "She could be in danger, or worse danger." "Oh yeah, because you can hear the trees laughing," Sanchez snapped, panic boiling over. "We're not officers in a fairy tale. We're cops, and our job is to keep our asses, not to play hero." The tension in the cruiser spiraled as headlights traced their path. The road seemed narrower, the darkness tightening around them like a vice. Sanchez cast nervous glances out his window, as if he expected the abyss to reach in and pull them out. With every twist and turn, the radio crackled sporadically, sparks of static cutting through the silence. "Unit 4 come in," a voice finally seeped through, distorted but unmistakably frantic. Parker pressed the button to respond, heart racing. "Unit 4 here. We need backup. There's something out there." "Backup?" The voice sounded hollow, as if it had traveled through miles of dread. "You're not supposed to be there. No one is supposed to be there. Go home now. Do you hear that?" Sanchez whispered, his eyes wide, sweat beading on his forehead. "It's warning us. We have to go." Parker slammed on the brakes, sending the cruiser skidding to a halt amidst gravel and dust. "It's not enough for them to warn us, Sanchez. They need to know what we saw." He felt the thrum of nerves locking in his throat. He needed to know if it was a tangible threat or a mere figment of their crumbling sanity. Sanchez shook his head, frustration blending with fear. "You're talking nonsense, man. We need to leave. We need to get back before the shrill sound of the radio interrupted. Unit 4, turn back. Turn back now." The urgency in the voice crackled through the speakers like electric shock, sending shivers down their spines. In the shifting darkness, something was moving, something that made the hairs on the back of Parker's neck stand on end. Shadows danced again, not merely from trees, but with a life of their own. They stretched, flickered, and morphed into shapes that were far too human. "What is happening?" Sanchez whispered beneath his breath, a plea pregnant with disbelief as he scanned the woods. A loud bang echoed from the trunk of the cruiser, making them both jump. The sound was abrupt, a cruel reminder that they were not alone. Parker exchanged a glance with Sanchez. "Let us make sure the coast is clear," he urged, fighting the impulse to lock the doors and wait it out. They stepped out, flashlights aimed into the dense wall of darkness that seemed poised to swallow them whole. The woods were quiet now, save for the rustling ahead, as if something in there was watching. "On 3, Parker murmured. 1, 2 before he could utter 3, a figure stumbled into the dim light, features distorted, soaked in shadows. It was her. "Help me," she rasped again, voice echoing with that haunting dissonance. "Run!" Sanchez screamed, and as they turned, they realized the forest had shifted, paths twisting in impossible directions, leaving them in a web of disorientation. They bolted, chasing after whatever semblance of escape they could grasp. But with every frantic step, it became clearer they were not just fleeing from the woods. They were being pursued by something sinister that thrived in the dark, and it was closing in fast. What waited behind those trees? What had they awakened? The night was alive, eager, and hungry for retribution. "Keep running!" Sanchez shouted, fear mingling with determination. They had no choice but to face whatever was lurking behind them, no matter how terrifying. Just then, a cold wind whispered through the forest, carrying an echo of laughter, mocking them, drawing them back toward the darkness. Would they find salvation from the terror lurking in the shadows, or would they become just another name in the night? The forest seemed to pulse around them, alive and watching. Each step echoed a cacophony of panic, thudding in Parker's chest, drowning out the world as the darkness stretched ahead like an endless maw. "Parker!" Sanchez gasped, his breath coming in short, desperate bursts. "Take a left. The path splits." Parker didn't think twice, he darted left, feeling the underbrush grab at their clothes, as if trying to hold them back. Shadows twitched and swayed, threatening to swallow them whole. He could feel a presence breathing down their necks, an evil that thrived on their fear, and every fiber of his being screamed to escape, but then silence. They stumbled to a halt, hearts racing as the stillness settled like a weight on their shoulders. "What just happened?" Sanchez whispered, his voice trembling. "It's too quiet." Parker peered into the darkness, gripping his flashlight tight. "It can't be far. We have to keep moving." He tried to sound confident, but inside, dread was gnawing at him. Suddenly, a scream shattered the eerie calm, echoing through the trees like a banshee's wail. It was a piercing, agonizing sound that tightened Parker's chest. That sounded like her. He shouted. "Are you insane? We shouldn't go back." Sanchez's eyes were wild, filled with panic that threatened to consume them both. The scream came again, more frantic, convinced him. Chills slid up his spine. "We can't just leave her. We have to know what's happening." Against Sanchez's protests, Parker turned back, moving forward cautiously, the beam of his flashlight slicing into the dark. The air was thick, charged with something unnameable that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. Sanchez's voice was barely above a whisper. "Can you feel that? It's like something's watching us." As Parker stepped deeper into the woods, he noticed the trees had changed. The familiar shapes morphed into grotesque figures, trunks twisting like contorted limbs, their branches clawing at the sky. Was it his imagination, or were they closing in? "Stay close," Parker muttered, struggling to keep his voice steady. He scanned the darkness, his heart racing against time. "If we can find her," but the words faded in his throat as a shape emerged in the distance, pale and broken, swaying among the trees. "Maybe it's not her," Sanchez warned, a whimper escaping his lips, the fear palpable. "Are we really going to chance that?" Parker replied, fear gripping him like ice. They stepped closer. The figure turned, and for a split second, hope flared in Parker's chest. But it wasn't the girl he had expected. It was a hollow-eyed version of her, features eerily warped, skin gleaming under the flashlight like it was wet. "Help me!" Its voice echoed through the stillness, but it was wrong-pitched with an unnatural undertone that made Parker's stomach churn. "Run!" Sanchez screamed again, and they bolted instinctively. As they fled, the forest roared back to life. Branches snapped sharply behind them, the laughter of shadows trailing like a vengeful spirit. Parker glanced over his shoulder, and what he saw dropped the breath from his lungs. A dozen figures emerging from the woods, eyes glinting with a hunger that pulled at the very fibers of his being. "Go! Go!" he shouted, adrenaline pumping through his veins as they raced down a path that seemed to shift underfoot. The figures were gaining, their laughter ringing in the night air, a chaos of madness and menace. "Where is the road?" Sanchez gasped, panic boiling over. "We can't keep running blindly." "I don't know." Parker yelled, feeling a foreboding weight behind him, darkness stretching, reaching, clawing at their heels. They stumbled into a clearing, the open sky above them stark against the oppressive shadows. But they hadn't escaped. The figures encircled them, still and silent now, their twisted forms casting grotesque silhouettes that danced in the dim light. "Why are they just standing there?" Sanchez's voice trembled as he stepped back, confusion etching deep lines of fear on his face. "I don't know," Parker whispered, tightening his grip on the flashlight. "But we need to move. Now." But the ground seemed to shake beneath them, and suddenly the figures charged, a tide of terror closing in as the laughter crescendoed, echoing, sinister, a symphony of madness that drowned out everything else. Parker spun around, searching for an escape, but the clearing was a trap. What lay beyond the trees, what awaited them in the shadows? As the figures drew near, a gut-wrenching realization hit him: they weren't just after them. They were after their souls. Just as he prepared to fight back, a blinding light filled the clearing, piercing through the darkness. It came from nowhere and everywhere at once, blinding them momentarily. "Is this salvation?" Sanchez shouted, squinting against the glare. Before Parker could answer, the ground trembled again, and the figures halted, wailing in a dissonant chorus of fright. "Get in the light!" Parker yelled, every instinct screaming to survive. But would it save them, or was it merely a facade? a trap hiding an even darker secret? As the light engulfed them, confusion clouded Parker's mind. Was this their salvation, or the last trick of whatever hunted them? With one final glance at the darkness closing in around them, Parker took a deep breath, but what awaited them beyond the light? Parker felt the light swallow them whole, the brightness pressing against his eyelids like a storm threatening to unleash its fury. It was overwhelming, but beneath the harsh glare, something stirred a pulse of warmth that beckoned him deeper. "Parker! I can't see!" Sanchez shouted, his voice edged with panic, dragged away by the weight of uncertainty. "Just hold on to my arm." Parker replied, adrenaline coursing through him, fueling an instinct to fight for their survival. He grasped Sanchez tightly, feeling the tremor in his friend's body. As the light began to fade, they found themselves standing in a surreal landscape. The air was thick, charged not only with electric energy but with an unshakable feeling of dread. The ground beneath their feet shifted like sand, pulsating, alive with whispers that turned into soft, chiding laughter. Where are we?" Sanchez breathed heavily, his eyes darting around, refusing to settle. The trees looked different here, still twisted and gnarled, but with a sickly glow that cast eerie shadows across their faces. Parker clenched his jaw. "I don't know, but it can't be worse than where we just were." Then he heard it, faint at first, a melody that echoed hauntingly between the trees, weaving through the air like a thread of silk. Sanchez froze, his wide-eyed terror slowly morphing into something deeper. A sense of understanding laid fragile before them. "Do you hear that?" Sanchez asked, his voice barely a whisper, practically lost amidst the disorienting sound. "What is that?" Parker replied, straining to listen. Each note coiled around him, creeping into his thoughts, unraveling his grip on reality. A figure began to materialize at the edge of the clearing, a woman cloaked in shimmering light, her face obscured in an enigmatic shadow. The melody intensified, echoing her movements as if the very trees began to dance along with her. "Help me," she sang, her voice sweet yet sorrowful, drawing them closer like moths to flame. "Don't!" Sanchez cried, pulling back, but a force seemed to draw Parker forward, his heart pounding with every step. "Wait!" he managed, glancing at Sanchez. But his friend was rooted, the fear evident in his stance. "What if this is the way out?" Sanchez shook his head fiercely. "Or another trap? Remember what happened before." Parker hesitated, the struggle between fear and hope raging within him. What if she knows something about the figures? He swallowed hard, his breath hitching, about the girl? But the woman's gaze held them, those shadowed eyes pulling at their very souls. "I cannot save you," she sang gently, "but I can show you the truth." The last word resonated, and without warning, the world warped. The trees spun around them, and the ground quaked. It felt as if the very essence of reality was folding in on itself. Parker staggered, struggling to remain upright as Sanchez cried out. Suddenly, the light erupted again, swirling, brightening until everything faded to white. When it dimmed, they were no longer in the strange realm, they found themselves in a different clearing, one that didn't seem to recognize them. "Where are we now?" Sanchez breathed, looking around frantically. At their feet lay a series of ancient glyphs, glowing faintly, and above them hung a sky streaked with colors they had never witnessed, swirling unnaturally. "What did we stumble into?" Parker said, apprehension creeping back in. The figures now loomed in the distance, just out of reach but unmistakably present, watching, waiting. "We have to find a way to escape, Parker," Sanchez insisted, his voice quaking as he stepped back. "They're not gone. They're still after us. Maybe the woman, she'll help us." Parker shot back, desperately glancing around. But the woman's presence was gone, replaced by an oppressive silence that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. "We have to make a choice," Sanchez whispered, inching closer. "We can't stay here." The weight of the looming figures combined with the ghostly echoes of their laughter settled heavily once more upon them. Parker felt a rush of determination, but also an icy grip of dread. Was this a point of no return? Which way should we go? He asked, fingers trembling against the glow of the glyphs. Do we trust the light? Or go back to the darkness? Sanchez replied, breathless with uncertainty. Just then, a jagged roar ripped through the clearing, vibrating the air around them. They turned as the figures advanced, hungry, relentless, and hungrier than ever. Desperation surged in Parker's chest. Time was running out. Would they confront the truth of this place, or succumb to the shadows? As the figures closed in, he faced Sanchez squarely, fear boiling just beneath the surface. We have to decide. Now. But before they could plot their escape, the ground beneath them trembled violently, a crack splitting the earth. And then, something began to rise from the darkness. What horror lay beneath? Would they be able to escape the truth before it swallowed them whole? The ground split wide open, a gaping maw of darkness threatening to consume them. Parker's heart raced, each thud echoing like a war drum in his ears. Beneath that terrifying chasm came a sound, a low, rumbling growl that reverberated through the very air they breathed. What the hell is that? Sanchez shouted, wide-eyed and trembling, grabbing Parker's arm tight enough that it hurt. I don't know. Parker shouted back, his voice barely cutting through the chaos. The figures, still lurking in the shadows, seemed to be drawing closer. Their laughter twisted into something darker, a chorus of malice. Look! Sanchez pointed, his voice wavering. Rising from the crack was a huge, sinuous shape. It twisted as it emerged, slick and dark, scales shimmering with an unnatural light. The air filled with a metallic scent, like blood mingled with sweet decay. Parker stumbled backward, dragging Sanchez with him. We can't stay. We have to go anywhere but here. They sprinted toward the nearest cluster of trees, dictated by pure instinct. Behind them, the ground pulsated as if the creature was alive, and that rumble grew into a deafening roar, shaking the foliage overhead. Parker, this way! Sanchez cried, veering to the left. They ducked beneath the jagged branches, trying to drown out the violent force pursuing them. Parker didn't look back, he couldn't. Fear clawed at his throat. They ducked deeper into the thicket, the dim light filtering through the twisted branches. Do you think it's still behind us? Sanchez gasped, his breath coming in ragged gasps, fear leaking out in every word. I don't know. Just keep moving. Parker urged, adrenaline coursing through him like wildfire. But the shadows around them shifted, and just when they thought they were safe, another roar split the air, slicing through their resolve. Suddenly, a flash of light illuminated the woods. Was it the same kind of light that had swallowed them before? Parker squinted against the brightness, trying to discern its source. The air hummed with energy, vibrating through the ground as if the very world was alive with a furious heartbeat. What is happening? Sanchez shouted over the din. The feeling of dread reached new heights as Parker was flooded with memories of the woman, the soft, haunting melody. What truth had she promised? Now, more than ever, he needed her guidance. Then, out of the swirling brightness stepped a figure. It was the woman, draped in her glittering cloak, but her face was no longer obscured. The sorrowful shadow was gone, revealing eyes that glimmered with both wisdom and pain. Follow me. She commanded, her voice breaking through the darkness, causing the air around them to crackle with urgency. Parker. We can't trust her. Sanchez yelled, his voice strained as he fought against Parker's initial urge to obey. I think she can help us. Parker replied, conviction burning in his gut. He had to believe there was more to this woman's presence, more than just darkness. The figures behind them hesitated, as if caught in the crossfire between their monstrous instincts and the enchanting light the woman offered. Pushing forward, Parker gripped Sanchez's wrist. Come on. They rushed toward her, the white light engulfing them again, swallowing their forms as they plunged deep into the brilliance. A sudden silence enveloped them, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just escaped. But they weren't safe yet. The cacophony began to rise again, a chorus of the figures building in power, in anger. Parker squinted against the brightness, desperation clawing at him. "What now?" Sanchez asked, his eyes darting nervously. "Trust her," Parker urged, feeling the warmth of conviction blossom inside him. "She said she could show us the truth. We need to understand what's happening before it's too late." But as he spoke, a tremor rippled through the light, and the colors began to swirl. Just when they thought they could comprehend their surroundings, everything began to spin violently, and the grasp of reality twisted like a ragged rope, and then, a voice broke through the haze, a chilling whisper laced with dreadful familiarity. "Do you think the truth will set you free, Parker?" In that moment, Parker's heart sank as he recognized who it was. "Not again," he gasped, as the horrifying face of the girl emerged from the light, eyes ablaze with a dark truth as the shadows closed in around them once more. What revelation awaited them in this relentless cycle? Would they be able to confront what they feared the most? Or would the darkness swallow them whole, leaving only echoes behind? The light was suffocating, swirling like a storm that threatened to consume everything in its path. Parker felt the weight of dread settle on his chest as he locked eyes with the girl, the embodiment of his worst nightmares, her gaze piercing through the brilliance. "What do you want from us?" he shouted, voice strained, a faint echo in the chaos. The shadows coiled around them like a living thing, slippery and insistent. "It's not what I want," the girl whispered, her tone sweet and sinister. "It's what you've always been destined to encounter." Parker's hands trembled. The words felt like ice water down his spine. Every instinct told him to run, yet here he stood, rooted to the earth. Sanchez grabbed Parker's shoulder, his breath ragged. "We need to go. This isn't right." But Parker couldn't break away from the girl's gaze. "What destiny?" he whispered. "Look all around you," she said, her smile unsettling. "You're already entangled in its web." A wave of shadows surged forward, thrumming against the light, the intense pull in tandem with an overwhelming surge of fear. Suddenly, Parker felt his reality falter. Shadows stretched and twisted, distortions of figures creeping closer, merging with the light. The world felt like it was buckling under the tension, the beauty was laced with horror, a cruel juxtaposition. "Don't look away," the woman commanded as the figures flickered in and out of his sight. The laughter returned, echoing off unseen walls. "Their truths are laced with lies, and they want you to fall into despair." With a heart thundering against his ribs, Parker took a step back, fear clawing at him. "Where's the truth in all of this?" "Trust your instincts," she replied, shadows flickering behind her as they pulled closer, an encroaching tide. "Instincts?" Sanchez interjected, voice rising frantic. "We can't trust anything here. We're trapped." Parker felt the ground shift beneath him, slipping away like grains of sand through his fingers. He turned to Sanchez, desperation bubbling in his gut. "I have to know. It's the only way to." Before he could finish his thought, the girl's expression darkened. "There's a price for knowledge," she whispered, "and some things are better left unknown." The world began to tilt violently, and the shadows encircled them, gripping tighter. Parker's throat tightened, and every instinct screamed at him to flee. Yet the truth beckoned from the abyss like an alluring siren, promising enlightenment but hiding deeper horrors behind her beckoning finger. "What price?" Sanchez yelled, the fear in his voice now palpable. "What are you talking about?" The girl stepped closer, her voice softening yet filled with a malicious undertone. "Your souls, for the truth you seek. Once you know, there's no turning back." Parker's instincts screamed at him like an alarm. "No. We're not giving up anything." But the girl's laughter pealed through the chaos, a sound that cut deeper than any blade. Dropping to the ground, Parker felt the earth beneath him pulse, alive with the fear and rage of the shadows surrounding. With a sudden rush, the light surged, colliding with the darkness, creating a cacophony of sound that shook him to his core. "Parker!" Sanchez cried as a sharp wind whipped through them, flinging them apart. The crack of thunder rolled in the distance, shaking the very fabric of their reality. As Parker fought against the rising tide of shadows, he thought he caught a glimpse of hope, a flicker of the truth that glimmered somewhere ahead, just beyond reach. "Fight it!" Sanchez screamed, desperately clawing through the vortex. But each breath was like stormy waves crashing against his chest, leaving him gasping for air. "Will you surrender?" The girl called, her voice both seductive and menacing. "Will you join the eternal dance of uncertainty?" Parker's heart raced as he struggled against the darkness wrapping around him, threatening to snuff out his will. He had to decide, had to act fast or risk losing everything to the merciless unknown that awaited him. Just as the shadows threatened to pull him under, one burning question ignited in his mind: what was the truth, and was it worth the cost? The darkness loomed closer, and just at the edge of his perception, Parker sensed a shimmering thread, the possibility of escape, the notion that maybe they could seize control of their fates. But at what price? As everything spiraled down into chaos, a final thought crystallized in his mind. They had to confront the truth no matter how dark it was, even if it meant unraveling everything they thought they knew. Would they choose the light, even when it cast terrifying shadows? Or would they be lost to the dance of despair forever? In that moment of utter chaos, Parker felt the weight of everything pressing down on him: his duty, his fears, the flickering shadows that threatened to overwhelm. It was more than just his life at stake. Lives were caught in the web that wrapped around them, dark and relentless. He could feel Sanchez's panic clashing against his own resolve, and it fueled him to push through the swirling chaos. "Stay connected," he shouted, gripping Sanchez's arm tightly, desperate not to lose him in the torrent of darkness. They both felt it, a pulsating energy that swarmed the air around them, shadows teasing and pulling, searching for weakness. But a glimmer broke through the storm, a spark that whispered hope. "We need to confront it," Parker urged, eyes steady on the shimmering light ahead. "That's the only way to break free from this nightmare." "Are you crazy?" Sanchez jerked back, fear spilling into his voice. "We know what happens when we get too close. There's no time to stand back." Parker barked. "Do you want to be lost forever?" The darkness momentarily faltered as the figures shrieked in protest, recoiling slightly from the courage sparking between them. They could sense the shift, a collective stumble among the shadows as both men took a step closer to the light. The haunting melody swirled around them, becoming a deafening crescendo, a furious reminder of both their past failures and the potential future that awaited. "Follow me," Parker shouted into the tumult, a determined cry, and began moving forward, his heart hammering against his ribs. Sanchez hesitated, but Parker's words echoed loudly, piercing through the haze of dread strangling him. With a deep breath, he stepped in line beside Parker, pushing against the fears tugging at him. Together they sprinted toward the light, its warm embrace promising refuge from the hell they were in. With every stride, the laughter of the shadows grew fainter, their grasp loosening as they ventured forth into the blinding glow. For the first time, a sensation of control washed over them, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, they could reclaim their narrative from this lurking menace. As they reached the threshold, the shadows clawed at their backs, desperate to pull them into the dark abyss. "You can't leave," the girl's voice echoed, layers of anger and sorrow mixed in a cry of forlorn agony. But Parker and Sanchez didn't waver, their resolve was solidified under the weight of the horror they had experienced. When they crossed into the light, a moment of silence enveloped them. The ethereal glow wrapped around them, melting the darkness away like ice under a blazing sun. They gasped, breath hitching in their throats as they collapsed into the softness of a glowing field, illuminated in colors they had never witnessed. Where are we?" Sanchez stammered, looking around in disbelief. "I don't know," Parker breathed, sweeping his gaze over the surrounding beauty. "But it feels different." He could still feel the shadows clawing at the edges of his mind, trying to reclaim what they had stolen. A lump settled in his throat, realization washing over him like a tidal wave. "We need to confront what we left behind. The truth is still out there." Sanchez tightened his jaw, understanding lighting up his eyes. Then we have to face it together. They stood tall, twin towers of courage against an uncertain threat. They might be standing in a different reality, but the echoes of their choices still lingered. They had ventured through the veil of darkness, faced the malevolence that sought to claim them, and emerged with the resolve to not only continue their fight but to never shy away from the shadows again. "We'll finish this," Parker affirmed, steeling himself against the memories clawing at him. "Together." And with that, they turned back, peering into the flickering darkness that still held its breath, ready to face whatever horrors awaited them in the depths of the wilderness they had once feared. The night was alive, but so were they, ready to reclaim their fate. As they stepped into the darkness, they understood that as long as they chose to fight together, the light would always find a way back into their hearts. But make no mistake, this was just the beginning of their journey. Now, if you're as invested in this tale as Parker and Sanchez are in reclaiming the light, this is your moment. You need to subscribe now if you haven't already. Don't miss a single thrilling twist or turn coming up in our next exclusive story. Smash that like button too, because it feeds the algorithm that helps keep this channel alive. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what happens next. I want to hear your thoughts. What would you do if you were in their shoes? And if you truly care about your friends who love a good story, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 people who need to experience this ride. Your support makes all the difference. Let's keep this community growing and thriving together.